What's going on, podcast listeners? My name is Michael Chernow. I am a restaurateur and lifestyle entrepreneur, and I am truly obsessed with living a life better than yesterday through wellness, fitness, and good vibes. I've always wondered if the drive to succeed is something we are born with, or if it's something that is made over time through grit, drive, and perseverance. I get to answer that question exactly, and the goal of this podcast is to talk with people that have absolutely crushed it in life and have inspired me to do the same. This is Born or Made. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Born or Made podcast. I am incredibly grateful and excited to introduce my next guest on this show. She has been an inspiration to me since the moment I met her. Could be one of the kindest people on the planet. I don't believe she has a bad bone in her body. She has very strong bones and muscles, but not at all a negative or bad bone in her body. Carrie Pearce is a 5 times CrossFit Games athlete. She has come in the top 10 4 years in a row. She is the 5th fittest woman on the planet. Yes, I just said that. She is the 5th fittest woman on the planet. She's represented the United States of America 2 years in a row at the CrossFit Invitational. She holds the New York bench press record at 240 pounds. She is about, 5'2"? Yeah,
you're good.
Probably just about the most inspirational fitness female I know. I can't say anything outside of I am just blown away by Kari Pearce, and she has influenced so many people. She has such a positive outlook on life and the way she goes about her fitness journey. I cannot wait to hear more about her fitness journey. Ladies and gents, Kari Pearce, welcome.
Thank you so much, Mike. You made that sound amazing. I was like, oh man, I don't know how I'm going to follow that up with anything that I say. So it's a pleasure to be on your show.
You know, fitness is a huge part of my life, and obviously fitness is a huge part of your life. And I can't wait to get into your story. I just have to say that I haven't met many people who are so serious about what they do in terms of their performance and their action, yet you would never know by sitting down and talking to you, because it doesn't seem like you take it so seriously, because you're so relaxed about it. And, you know, I remember a couple years ago, we did a plank off, and I held a plank for as long as I've ever held a plank before. I think I held a plank for 18 minutes. You went on for, I think, over 30 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. You're just incredible, and you are a true performer, and one of the most incredible athletes to walk the planet, which is really kind of crazy to say. So I've got a bunch of questions for you, but I'd love for you to just take a minute and introduce yourself.
As you said earlier, I'm a CrossFit athlete. I started off as a gymnast. I was a gymnast for 18 years. I started at the age of 3 with my sister. She's 2 years old, so my parents put us in gymnastics. Along with a lot of other sports, but I just kept going back to gymnastics. So I did that for 18 years, and I finished at the University of Michigan on the Varsity Gymnastics team there. And when I was done, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I knew it had to do something with fitness. I studied movement science in college and wanted something like with the human body, performance. I wasn't sure exactly what it was, but my initial thoughts was actually to go to PA school. And then I got into a gym outside of college, and I was like, okay, I actually don't want to be in a hospital. I want to be into fitness. So I took like a bunch of the organic chemistry, biochemistry, all those tough classes that I don't use now because I thought I was going to go to PA school. But I did some shadowing in a hospital and then also personal training at a gym. I realized how much I loved fitness. So after college, I decided that I wasn't going to go to PA school like I originally thought. I thought I was just going to be more of a trainer and a coach, but then I found out that I also loved doing fitness myself. Even after the 18 years of gymnastics, I still wanted to be involved in physical fitness at some level. So I did some weightlifting right after that. I did a physique show after that. I did some powerlifting, and then I found CrossFit. I started CrossFit in November 2014. And yeah, I've been to the games 5 years in a row since. And that's, I mean, pretty much sums up my fitness journey.
Being able to sit across from you on Zoom, I like to say it's across from you because this is as close to across as we can get right now with this crazy pandemic. But you know, you're an athlete at the highest level. You are an elite performance athlete, and I know that does not come easy. You know, this podcast is called Born or Made, and the idea behind this podcast is to really sort of dive into the topic of whether or not people like you were born with an inherent ability to get to where you are at today, or if it just came over, if you were made over time through dedication, perseverance, and grit. I think it's a very, very interesting topic because I question it myself often. You know, what drove me to continue to push? What made me at a young age want to get out there and make and do? And so I guess the idea would be to sort of go back to as early as you can remember and understand what it was that drove you. If you can put a finger on it. I mean, you started at 3 years old, so I'm assuming, you know, your parents had something to do with that. But can you remember a time throughout those early days where you were just like, this is it. I'm going to push. I'm going to be the best. I'm going to go as hard as I can. Because I know that's what you're like today. I mean, you cannot not think that way if you're the fifth fittest woman on the planet, which is, I still can't even fathom saying that because that's an intense title to hold. So let's go back to the early days and let's try to figure out whether you are born or if you were made.
When I started at 3, I don't really remember much of that. But I do remember when I got a little bit older, it was around 7 or 8. I can't remember the exact age, but there was 2 times I heard a similar saying, and it was from 2 different people. One was one of my coaches, and the other one was my father. And it was, I don't know the exact time frame between the 2, but I remember them both telling me that I wasn't the most gifted kid, but I was the hardest worker. And at the time, like, I don't know, being a young kid, I almost took that to heart as an insult and was like, what are you saying? I'm not talented. Like, how come? And I was like, well, maybe I am just as talented as the other ones and I work harder. But I think part of just hearing that at such a young age and taking it as an insult, it almost like fired me to push as hard as I can and work hard day in and day out. And I knew gymnastics was what I wanted to do. Like I said, my parents put me in a bunch of different sports, and I always just wanted to go back to gymnastics. So basically, starting at the age of 5, I did 20 hours plus of gymnastics a week, and basically from 5 through 21, which is when I finished my career at the University of Michigan in gymnastics, I had been doing 20 hours, at least. Sometimes it was 25, sometimes 30 hours of gymnastics a week. So I think that's definitely something that just sticks out in my brain. Just being younger, like my dad, like I said, he told me that my brother and sister were more athletically gifted, but I would work harder.
Do you remember the feeling? Do you remember actually having a feeling, an internal feeling that once you heard that, you said to yourself, I'm going to do this to prove them wrong?
Yeah. I said I almost felt like I actually did feel like I was insulted. And I was like, and I mean, you should use it as motivation. Like, you're the hardest worker. That's because they say, you know, you have to work hard. Hard work beats talent. But when I was younger,
Do you believe that? Do you believe hard work beats talent?
I mean, I think you have to have both. I mean, if there's somebody who's talented and doesn't care and doesn't work hard and has, like, other goals, the person who ends up working harder is going to be more successful. But when you see, I mean, especially just looking at the top CrossFit athletes, when you see them, there's definitely a mix of talent and hard work. To be at the top of the level, I don't think you can have one without having the other. I mean, a great work ethic, I believe, will take you farther at the end of the day than just having talent alone. But to be where I'm at, I'm thankful that my parents met in a gym, and I've been into fitness my whole life, so kind of everything accumulated to where I'm at today. Why, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I think that I think that it's so tough because I don't think that in terms of fitness is concerned, people consider me to be like a really fit person, and I would say that I've built businesses, and quite frankly, most of the questions that I get through social media or just in general when I'm doing anything in media are about fitness, fitness and nutrition, more so than the restaurant business. And so I think that health is wealth for real today, more so than ever before, probably. But I do believe that I've worked really, really hard, and I could recall, from the early days of Muay Thai, because I competed and trained Muay Thai for a long time, and I had to work really, really hard, and I had to get my ass kicked. And I remember one day getting hit really hard and hitting the floor, and I was sparring with someone who was much better than me. And I hit the floor, and I felt like I was very close to being knocked out. And I said, I don't think I'll ever be as good as this guy. I don't know if I'll ever be as good as this guy. And I got right back up after I sort of saw stars for a second, and then something switched in me, and every single time I got hit, I just came right back, and unless I got knocked out, which only happened a few times, I never allowed a hard hit to make me feel inferior. I actually used those hard hits as momentum to push forward and to just keep going. There was a guy that I would spar clinching with, and clinching in Muay Thai is, it's a very humbling thing, especially when someone has better technique and someone is stronger than you. And this guy that I would spar clinching with wouldn't even use his hands. He would literally clinch with me, which is like you hold on the back of somebody's neck, and you're holding each other. You're trying to either take somebody down or turn them so you can do some sort of move. And he wouldn't even use his hands. He would just clinch with me with his shoulders and his head. And it was so humbling. And and so I believe that I have a combination of the two for sure. But I do believe that people are born with something. I believe people are born with something. I also you're probably one of the first guests on the show to really sort of pinpoint this idea that you had some adversity early on that made you want to go crush. I had that later on in life with my career, but it makes me question whether that moment of you hearing either your father or your coach say, you're not as talented as the rest of them, is what made you who you are today. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely think it has a big role, just because I feel like just at that moment, I'm like, okay, well, if I'm not as talented, then I have to overcome it with hard work. And I think just working so hard at a young age into gymnastics, I think also ended up going over to school, and then ended up going over just into everything that I do, and obviously now CrossFit, and then even with my PowerAbs brand, everything that I do, I have the highest standards. I don't do anything just to do it. And I think part of it is just learning that at such a young age, I'm going to work hard and it's going to pay off, and you start to see it pay off right away, just in gymnastics, and then it relays over to other things. And I've kind of just accepted that whatever I do in anything, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, which is, something that my father instilled in me at a different point in time. He was always very hard on me, and I think it's because he knew that I had high expectations of myself, and sometimes I think he held my standards a little higher than my brothers and sisters. And I don't know if it's because he was told me I had less talent, but no, I worked harder. And that I would actually listen to whatever he said. But I think my father's been a big figure in my life that has allowed me to be as successful as I am today.
Have you ever talked to your father about that, him saying that?
I actually haven't. And I don't know, I go back on it and I'm I'm so thankful for it. At the same time, when I was younger, like I said, it was a slap in the face. So yeah, I have not actually sat down with my father, but I've been thinking a lot more about it, especially since being in quarantine, and I have a lot more time to myself, and just thinking about my amazing parents. My mom is equally as amazing, but it just, I guess, didn't have the same impact on me when I was younger. But I've thought about it a lot recently, just because I've had more time alone to reflect. But that would be a very interesting conversation.
I would, yeah. I mean, I think I had a very similar experience a little bit later on in life. When I was about 25, I sat down with a mentor of mine who was my last boss before I opened up the meatball shop. And that's when I had sort of known, I'd come to the conclusion that I was going to take on the restaurant industry as my livelihood, as my career. And I sat down with Frank and I said, and I'd already been working for him for about 5 years. And I said, I think this is what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to go out there and try to open up my own restaurant. And we were in his apartment. I had asked for the meeting. I knew that this was what I was going to ask him. I thought because he had been such he was like a mountain of inspiration for me at that point in my life. And I thought he was going to be like, go for it, Mikey. I got your back. And the truth is that when I asked him, what he thought about it, he said, I don't know if you have it in you, kid. And, that put fire under my ass like nothing else. I remember it like it was yesterday. I know exactly where we were sitting. I know how I felt. I literally felt insulted but inspired at the same time, just because I just had this feeling that I was going to do it, and I knew that it was going to be in my path, and whether I failed or succeeded was obviously to be determined. But I think because he said that, it pushed me to really want to get after it. And now, interestingly, and I can't wait to see what your father has to say when you talk to him about it, but when I talked to Frank about that, and I said, hey, do you remember sitting down with me in your apartment? And he said, of course I remember. And I said, you told me that you didn't think I had it in you. And he was like, of course I did. I did that purposefully. And that was like a really, I mean, it almost makes me emotional thinking about it, because it was such a pivotal moment in my life, because it really motivated me to want to go out there and be the best I possibly could be. So I'd be interested to hear maybe on round 2 of Born or Made with Kari Pearce to see how your father responds to that. So 18 years in gymnastics from 3 years old to 21 years old through college. Did you love every minute of it, or was it difficult for you as a kid having to, did you feel like you wanted to do it, or did you feel it was more about your parents that wanted you to do it? Like how did that feel?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of a roller coaster. I mean, most of it I loved, but then there was some points in my career. In gymnastics, you have to basically decide if you're going to go the Olympic route or go the college route. At a young age, I took a trip to Texas to see if the Olympic route was the route that I wanted to go. And I remember being with Dominique Mucciano's dad. It was just so intense and extreme that I was like, no, I want to quit gymnastics. My parents just wanted to test to see if the Olympic route was the route that I wanted to go. And I was down there for a week, and I came back and I was like, I want to quit gymnastics. And they're like, do you want to quit gymnastics, or you just don't want to go I was like, no, I want to quit.
How old were you?
8 years old.
8. Do you remember what made it feel so intense?
It was, the coaches were just like, they were screaming at you the whole time, and like you were training like 7-8 hours a day, and just like the whole environment was very hostile. And I like the gym that I went to, because I was born and raised in Michigan. And the gym that I went to there, like the coaches were very nice, they were still hardcore and everything, but they wouldn't scream at me, similar to this environment. And basically like the coach is like, well, if she wants to go to the Olympics, this is what it's going to take. So I feel like there was just like totally different atmospheres if the Olympics was where you wanted to go, or kind of college, or maybe it was maybe just the gym that I went to. But that's kind of what I had in my head, was like, okay, I don't want to go to the Olympics. And like I said, for a little while I wanted to quit, but my parents like brought me back, and I ended up like finding the love for the sport again after that like crazy experience for the week. And they're like, you don't have to worry about going to the Olympic route, you can just go the college route, which was still 20 hours a week of doing gymnastics. And then I mean, you go through injuries. I had a couple back injuries, a shoulder injury. There was just like little things, and you go through that and you're like, do I really want this? And 20 to 25 hours a week, it takes up a lot of time. And sometimes like Friday nights, I'm like, I just want to be a normal, especially high schooler, and go out with friends and stuff. But no, I'm going to go to gymnastics instead. I missed my high school prom because I had nationals. So there was some things that I had to obviously give up to be as successful in the sport. And there was, times that were harder than others, but for the most part, I loved it. And even after I said I wanted to quit, after a little bit of time, I refound the love for this sport. So I was thankful that I did have parents that were fully supportive of me throughout my journey, even though it wasn't always easy, but they always found the way to like kind of get me away from it and then guide me back into it.
I mean, it's so awesome that you had parents that were there by your side the whole time. And you said your parents met in a gym, so I'm assuming they are also, fitness is a huge part of their life.
Yeah, no, fitness is a huge part. Like they have lifetime memberships just to a Bally's Total Fitness. They haven't started CrossFit and they won't start CrossFit. They're like, we're too old for that. I was like, nobody's too old, but fine, like do what you got to do. But they come to all of my competitions and everything. And they have like a weight set in the basement and everything. So I had that kind of growing up, and they always just instilled fitness as being a big part of my life, along with my brother and sister, which I'm very fortunate for because I know not a lot of people have that.
Are your brother and sister as ambitious as you are?
No, they're not. Especially in the fitness world. My sister works at a restaurant. She's a server. She lives in Chicago. And my brother got his degree in mechanical engineering and actually just started working last fall at a supplier for Ford Motor Company. So he's really gotten into like the corporate world, and she's still getting her college degree. She's on like a 7 or 8 year plan, but I mean, she's working in the meantime, and I feel like they kind of enjoy other things in life more than I do. I just like I am very like tunnel vision to fitness, and I don't know, that's basically my whole life. But
there's something that I believe at my core, and I wonder if you share the similar belief, but specifically in the last probably like 3 to 5 years, the term success and happiness have been used a lot, and sort of the definition of those two terms, of those two words rather, have taken a different path, I think, than what we're used to thinking about happiness and success, especially growing up and, you know, through high school and sort of like whenever I heard the word success, all I thought about was like money. Right? Like that's what, like growing up, it was like, oh, this person's successful. That means that person is probably driving a nice car, probably has a really nice house or two, and like does whatever they want financially. I think that has changed a bunch over the last few years. And I know for me, I'm like pedal to the metal in most everything I do, similar to you. Whether I'm going to do it professionally or just as a hobby, it's like I don't do anything that I'm not going to go full force on. I know what happiness means to me. Happiness is, you know, I know that if I feel confident on the inside, and I know that I've taken care of myself on the inside, and the way I do that is through fitness and nutrition, I am a much better person to everyone around me. And so I draw a direct line to happiness and success through how well I'm feeling internally on the inside in between my 2 ears. Do you share that similar experience or that similar philosophy?
yeah, I definitely do. PAs make a good amount of money, and I mean, I didn't have to go to med school and get all that debt and all the years of that, but I could go to PA school and still do really well, make a great income. Is it exactly what I wanted to do? Not necessarily. And I think kind of like right out of college, when I decided not to do PA school and to kind of go into fitness, was, I don't know, when I kind of like, for a short period of time, kind of changed my perception of myself. So I'm like, well, now if I don't go to PA school and then I'm making, you know, because they end up making like $100,000 a year just going like, this is like a set path. I'm like, and personal trainers make, it depends on the personal trainer, on average a lot less than PA school. And it's like, does that mean I'm going to be like less successful or less happy or whatever? But I'm like, in my heart, I know that I don't want to be stuck in a hospital. A lot of people do, and props to them, like, mad respect, but that's not who I am. I'd rather be in a gym. And for a short period of time, it was kind of like, am I going to be known as like a jock, you know, that's just going and training and not successful? Because I am in a gym. But then I feel like after a couple years have like accumulated, I'm like, I actually do like this. And I notice myself making changes in people's lives, and that happiness just like filled me, knowing that you're making other people better can far outweigh anything that a dollar sign will.
What does fitness mean to you?
Fitness just means taking care of yourself, finding, you know, what ways that you can move just to make sure that you're healthier, you have more energy, you're in a better mood, just to make your life more successful and kind of, you know, be the person that you want to be, in the healthiest version of yourself. And as far as fitness, like, people ask me what the best kind is, and it's, you know, it's whatever you decide that you want to do. If you enjoy doing CrossFit, great. If you enjoy bodybuilding, great. If you enjoy running, perfect. So I don't think that there's like one sort of physical activity that should be the perfect form of fitness, because it really depends on what you enjoy doing. Obviously, I suggest people do a mix of cardio and strength training, but you have to find what works for you and what you actually enjoy so that you can stick with it.
Is there like a piece of advice that you can recall that was given to you throughout your journey that has always rung true to you? Whether it was a piece of advice that was given to you by your father or by a coach or by just hearing it, reading about it. Is there anything that you really sort of hold close to the vest that you believe in, that you pass on to others?
I don't know exactly if there was like ever a point in time that somebody like directly told me this or anything, or I just kind of picked on it from observing other people. Like one person sticks out in my mind, and I'm not going to like say who, just because I think part of the reason I believe that I'm successful is that I'm not a complainer and I have a positive outlook on a lot of things. The one thing that I hate the most is when people complain on a consistent basis. I don't get the point of complaining. I know sometimes it feels good if you just like to let it out real quick and then, okay, you're done. But I've been around people that just complain, and especially right now, like there's two ways you can kind of look at what's going on, especially with coronavirus. Like either you can have a negative impact or negative outlook on it and be like, oh, I lost my job, somebody else lost their job, like finance, sick, whatever. Like, but there's also positive ways that we can look at it. And it's like, you get to spend more time with friends and family and loved ones, or start something that you've never started before. So I think just for me, like making sure that you don't have a negative outlook on things, you can always find the positive. In addition to, don't complain. People don't want to hear it. It's not going to change anything. So figure out what you can do to turn something negative into something positive without complaining and bringing other people down. I hope that answers it.
No, I love that. And I think that is it's so true. I think people that complain a lot tend to fall into a pattern of complaining, and it actually becomes an addiction. For a lot of people, it's not something that they're potentially even it's intentional. I think when somebody asks, I mean, I don't want to name names either, but like there's a number of people in my life that like I'm very wary about asking them how they're doing, because they're going to be honest with me, and and it's always negative, and it's difficult to hear that on a regular basis, So I agree. I think complaining is definitely something that is not, there's nothing positive that comes out of it, right? Is there a moment throughout your journey that you can remember feeling like you failed and not allowing that to penetrate, as actually using that potential failure as motivation outside of the situation that you heard about, that your father said to you when you were younger? Is there a time in your career where you were just like, that really hurt, I'm going to use this as part of my ammunition?
I don't know if it's necessarily like hurt or what the exact feeling is, but part of it is, so right when I got into CrossFit, I was actually engaged, and me and my now ex-fiance ended up breaking up. And I think part of that, I don't know if it was necessarily like a failure, but I mean, you're in a long relationship and it ended, which was for the best. And I look back and I'm like, I'm thankful that we did. Obviously at the time I was, hurt and whatever, but it was kind of a mutual thing. So through that, like I said, it was when I was starting CrossFit, and I kind of used that as fuel just to focus all of my energy on fitness, and just to try and use that negative energy and turn it into positive and something that will help me to at least try and pursue my goals. And it ended up I ended up turning into a lot better CrossFit athlete than I had ever imagined. And I mean, it's not all related to that, but I think just in the beginning, it was nice having like this fire behind my back that was like, okay, I'm going to get away from this crazy situation. And just like, I ended up spending more time in the gym, just working out to relieve a little bit of the stress and kind of take my mind off of everything that was going on. So it wasn't, I guess, necessarily like a failure, but that's definitely like a moment in time where something negative happened, and that I was like, it could have just taken over my life, and I could have been like, oh, I'm just going to give up on fitness, and I'm going to go do something else, whatever. Because he also worked in a gym, so working out sometimes like made me think of him and whatever. So I could have used it as a negative, something negative in my life, or I could have shifted it and used it as something positive. So I chose to use it as something positive, and I'm really glad I did, because I feel like I wouldn't be the person or athlete that I am today without that experience.
That's an incredible piece of advice, I think, for people that are either, I mean, right now, coronavirus, I mean, there's a lot of relationship drama right now. There's just no doubt, I mean, full transparency. I mean, my wife and I probably had never spent this much time in a room together with our with our two kids in our whole relationship. And the first 6 weeks, we decided that it was like time for us to go to see a therapist. So we did a couple of therapy sessions. That was so helpful. I mean, it was like having a mature way of looking at it, as opposed to just being like, this sucks, we're going to fight, this isn't awesome. We both said to ourselves, you know what, like, let's go reach out and see if there's someone that can sit down with us online and help us sort of walk through some of this stuff. And so it sounds like, you were able to see the positive in a pretty tough situation. I think a lot of people are struggling right now in their relationships because, intimacy is something that human beings struggle with in general. And when you're forced to be in close quarters, it's tough. So, I think communication and really, being able to see the positive in every situation is really the only way to go. I want to talk to you about a few specific questions. So I've hung out with you a bunch of times. I can't imagine you're ever more than 5% body fat. I mean,
same with you.
I don't think I've ever, you are so lean and you are always in tip top elite shape. And I know that people aspire to be where you are on a consistent basis. What are some of the things that you do? Do you count your macros? Is there a certain time that you like to train? Do you train fasted? Let's just talk about your training a little bit, because I think that so many people, anybody who sees pictures of you, I mean, you have, I don't know, 250,000 followers on Instagram. People are, very engaged. Your audience is very engaged with you. What are the questions you get and like on a regular basis about your routines?
My training, in order to be the fittest woman on earth, I love saying that too. You got to brag about yourself every once in a while, right?
Hey,
you work hard.
Get it,
yeah.
Girl. Get it.
You work hard at shows, you got to talk about it. So I do train a lot. Usually 5 days a week, 4 to 6 hours a day. 1 day is active recovery, which is usually like an hour of cardio. I have an endurance coach who writes all of my cardio kind of endurance sessions. So I do 2 on Thursday and then 1 specific endurance session the other 5 days a week, which is either running, it used to be swimming, hopefully when pools open up again, rowing intervals, ski erg intervals, biking, so something of that nature. And then in those 4 to 6 hours on the 5 days a week, I also incorporate some strength training, which is squats, deadlifts, strict press, bench press, something of that sort, along with weightlifting, which is crucial to my sport, whether it's clean and jerks, just different weightlifting movements. Then I also have some bodybuilding stuff that I'll do in my training, some gymnastic skill, and then CrossFit, Metcons, a short workout that's for time. So you might do a 400-meter run, 15 pull-ups with 15 thrusters. And it's short and intense, but spikes your heart rate. And I think that's part of what keeps me so lean too, is just that intensity. That I do 5 to 6 times a week, all the training. Then nutrition, I follow RP Strength. Yeah, Renaissance Periodization. And I actually started working with them about a year into CrossFit. So when I did the physique training, I had like a very specific eating regimen. But it was about 1,800 to 2,000 calories a day. And that was training 1 hour a day. So when I switched to CrossFit, the intensity went up, the volume went up, and I realized that I didn't have the energy that I should. And this company, the guy actually went to University of Michigan, so the same as me, so he reached out and had to make that connection. And he's like, what nutrition plan are you following? And I was like, well, I was a physique athlete, so I'm following something similar to that. And he's like, when you're training for performance, it's a lot different than when you're eating for performance. It's a lot different than when you're just eating for looks. I mean, in my head, it was all just eating healthy. I had my degree in exercise science. You think I would know better, but I was like, okay, fine, we can start working together. So he ended up like way increasing my carbs, decreasing my protein, and fat decreased a little bit. So right now, I mean, I don't tell people to follow the exact numbers because I train a lot, but I do consume like 80 to 90 grams of fat, around 140 to 150 grams of protein. And then on training days, it's around 450 grams of carbs. So it's a lot of food.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of food, just to keep up with that amount of volume and, to feed all the muscle too. It burns up a lot. And I know that I have to have energy when I'm training. So it is for performance, but I'm also very vain and I love being low body fat and, having my abs.
That is okay. So 450 grams of carbohydrates, 80 to 90 grams of fat, and 160 grams of protein. That's sort of your macros on training days.
Yep.
Where are your macros off training?
Off training, the fat goes up a little bit. Then it's around 90 to 100 grams of fat. The same protein, and then I'm down to around 250 grams of carbs.
And what do you like? What's your favorite carbohydrate?
Oatmeal. People always joke, and they're like, sometimes I eat oatmeal like 3 to 4 times a day, and I'm like, I just love it. I don't know, and it actually started when I was physique competing that I ended up eating more oatmeal, and I think it's because it was a little more volume than like the brown rice. So especially when I had to like cut or brown rice or sweet potatoes. I love sweet potatoes as well. I'll eat
I love
a
sweet
lot
potatoes.
of those. Yeah. Is that your go-to carb? What's your go-to carb?
So you and I are very similar. My go-to carbs are oats and sweet potatoes.
Yeah.
I'm right now in off season for bodybuilding, and I start my prep on the weekend of July 4th, of course. So my coach has me, my coach has me on a pretty long prep. So it's kind of cool that it's not super drastic in the contest prep. I don't go from right now I'm actually only eating about 2,100 calories a day. And my macros are 220 protein, 220 carbs, 55 fat on my training days. But we went, I was supposed to compete on May 30th, and because of Corona, obviously, I had to, sort of, we sort of pulled back and reversed out of the prep. But in the peak of the prep, I was eating 60 grams of carbohydrates, 190 grams of protein, and 35 grams of fat. And it was just, I was eating 1,400 calories a day, 1,400 calories a day. We were in quarantine. I think that probably had a lot to do with why my wife and I were arguing so much, because I was ready to, I probably wanted to eat her arm. And I was just like ready to rip. Yeah, just like I was hungry, but I think it's so interesting, eat for performance or eat for aesthetics. And I would probably say most people in the world don't grasp the concept of nutrition is really everything, specifically for performance and aesthetics, right? Like, you can train your ever-loving ass off, but if you're not eating for the purpose, if you're just sort of eating, you're not going to get what you're looking for. And I would say that through my experience with bodybuilding specifically, eating is everything. It's just everything. And it's not like there's no arguing about it. You can train for 3-4 hours a day and not be tracking macros, and you're not going to see much. It's wild to see how nutrition plays into sports and performance. So what time do you typically train? Do you train fasted, or do you always train full?
No, I always train with something in my system, something like RP Strength has recommended, because for a while I would train fasted, especially if I do morning cardio, like morning run or swim. But they're like, even if you don't eat anything, then at least have some sugars and protein, something to fuel your performance. I have to have some sort of carb in my system to have energy to be able to run the times that I have to get, because I have an endurance coach and he sets certain paces for certain workouts. And I've noticed if I don't have something in my system, some sort of fuel, then I'll be a lot slower and I won't be able to hit those certain times. So there was a time period where I was trying to eat something like actual food before I would go for a run, and my stomach would just keep getting upset. And they're like, let's just try and do like a liquid, so something easier. Like I can row or swim or whatever on solid foods, but when it comes to running, I think it's just everything like bouncing around, moving. I don't know, running's hard.
So what would be your carbohydrate source for that?
eat some sort of simple sugar. If people like, sometimes if I have Kool-Aid, it's Kool-Aid or Tang, or I just have like a generic sugar supplement that's just like dextrose mixed with some whey protein. Something simple that like most of the time you're like, you shouldn't be drinking that, but it's something that you drink right before, so it just fuels, gets into the muscles quickly. And I also have something similar to that, sugars and protein while I work out, especially since my workouts are longer. Some are up to 4 hours for a training session. I need to make sure that I continue to have energy and don't crash in the middle of a workout.
Gosh, I have so many questions for you. I know we've been going on. Well, we got about 15 more minutes. So this, because I think this is truly what people want to hear. Speaking to an athlete at the highest level, being able to understand what it takes, you know, the food that you eat, the amount that you train. You're obviously in a newer sport. Typically in newer sports, the competition levels are much, much, much higher because people are trying to stake their claim early on. And I know CrossFit's probably been going on for about maybe 15, 20 years now, but at sort of in a real public way, I would say in the last 10 years, it's become a real sport that people are focusing on. It doesn't get the best rap, right? I mean, people say that CrossFit is a very dangerous sport, and if you don't know what you're doing, it's just it's an injury prone sport. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I have a few different thoughts. First of all, like right when I started CrossFit, well, before I started CrossFit, I was actually anti-CrossFit, just because I did hear what everybody else was hearing, especially with like the butterfly pull-ups not being good for your shoulders and the high rep barbell cycling isn't healthy for your back and all the negative things that kind of came with it. And I was just personal training in a gym at the time. And there was just so many negative things. And I was like, I feel like I should look more into this. And I like saw it. So I obviously got interested in what the sport of CrossFit was. But I think part of all the negative stigma comes from like right when CrossFit started. Like you said, especially from like the 10 to 15 year mark ago, the coaches weren't qualified. So how you get your CrossFit certification to be able to coach CrossFit is a weekend seminar. And it's 2 days, I think like 7 or 8 hours a day. You shouldn't be certified to coach people with that little of training. Like you didn't have to have any sort of anatomy, physiology knowledge, and you could just become certified and then be able to coach like this. Personal training certifications take, depending on the certification, 6 to 8 weeks of studying and learning the movements in the human body, not a weekend-long certification that any average Joe can just go and take and be a CrossFit coach.
Is there a personal training certification that you would suggest for somebody thinking about getting into the industry? That's like, it's a great all-around cert.
Yeah, so I actually asked a lot of people that question before I got mine. So lucky for me, like I have my degree, which they say counts for however long, but I also wanted to get like something that was a little more focused on just personal training. So I got the ISSA, Certified Personal Trainer certification, and that was great. And it was all online. They sent me a book you could do kind of at your own pace. So that would be the one that I would recommend to people.
All right, so weekend CrossFit cert.
Yeah, so it was just a weekend cert, and that's why I think CrossFit got such like negative feedback from people, because it was so easy for these coaches to get certified to coach, and then they would jump into a gym and then start coaching classes when they had no real knowledge of how the human body moved and worked. And my first coach actually was a strength and conditioning coach in college for college athletes. He worked at University of Texas, University of Tennessee. So very, very knowledgeable guy. And I was like, okay, well, he's like super educated, but apparently there's other people out there that aren't at that level. And I think just from CrossFit being, because I started 5 years ago, so I mean, but I think with each year.
Wait a second, you started CrossFit 5 years ago?
Yeah, like five and a half years ago, November 2014.
You started CrossFit 5.5 years ago, and you are, wait a second, I'm. When did you compete in the first games?
2015.
You competed in the games the first year that you started doing it.
Yeah.
That's out of control. And you've come in top 10 4 years in a row.
Yeah.
That's superhuman.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you a superhero?
Yep.
Are you a superhero?
Like my parents tell me I was born here, but I think there's something they're hiding, right?
Oh my gosh.
You just made my day, by the way.
That's so crazy. That's so crazy. You are you're like a real living superhero. And I mean, because I know people that attempt to get into the CrossFit Games that have been attempting to get in the games for years, and they just they can't make it through. You made it in your first year, and then where did you place year one?
21st.
Is your plan to win? Is that your plan, or are you just that's your plan?
Of course. I mean, being a competitor, I am going to win the CrossFit Games, or I'm going to die trying. One of the two.
I love that you just said that. I am so happy you said that.
You don't train hours and hours and hours to go to the CrossFit Games and take 5th place, you know? Like, being the competitor that I am, it's like, I want to be the best, and so I'm going to continue to push and, like, make improvements in the areas that I need to be the best. So I eat, sleep, breathe CrossFit. And like you said, similar to you, like it's just this tunnel vision. When I see something, I'm going to do everything humanly possible to get there.
What do you think? And I don't want to make it seem like you're missing anything, but where do you think you are coming up short? And I know that this is like kind of whatever. I mean, it's not a sensitive question. You're an athlete, and you know, with athleticism, you deal with wins and losses. But where do you think you're coming up short?
A couple things. Because I have the extensive gymnastics background, that is all amazing. Like one of the events that I won last year at the CrossFit Games was handstand push-ups, pull-ups, and single leg squats. So it had gymnastics all over it. But I mean, and you can even look at the event. So you're not offending me in any way. The weightlifting is where I just need to continue to improve. Just my legs aren't as strong as a lot of the other girls, and that's just been something that, because of the gymnastics, it's all upper body, and then I did weightlifting for a short period of time. It's just something that I'm continuing to work on, is just get my squats up, and then also some of the endurance stuff, especially running and swimming. I grew up, like I said, doing gymnastics. Your longest routine is a minute and a half, so anything that's longer is just super foreign to me, and that's something that I believe was a reason that I was successful in the beginning of my career, is because my coach told me I needed to work on that, and I did. It still is a work in progress, but I've gotten a lot better at the running and the swimming and the rowing, all of that endurance stuff that people wouldn't think that I should be good at because of my background. It's just putting in the time where you need to work on those weaknesses.
My bench press and my squat's actually not bad, but my legs don't show for it. I don't know why. I think I probably have to eat 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day. And I think what I'm going to do is, after this show on October 11th, I think I'm just going to go in and just be cool with, like, you know, losing the appearance thing and being cool with just like putting some fat on and trying to see if I can do one last push. You know, I'll be 40, which is kind of crazy to think about, but I'll be 40 in October. And so I'll compete in the bodybuilding show on October 11th. I'll turn 40 on October 21st. I'm going to spend the whole year of my 40th year trying to put on some serious size so I can try to get some quads, because my quads are just, I just can't get them. I don't know. I mean, I don't have skinny legs, but I don't have those boulder legs that, I think I'll need to push past 400 pounds on the squat. Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting that when you get into this world of fitness and you're a person like you don't stop until you get what you want, and then when you get what you want, you kind of just want some more, and it's like, I think if you could live a life where there's always a goal in your path, I think life becomes a lot more enjoyable. When there's something that you're working towards, I remember in the early days, I was the guy who really introduced me to fitness, this dude, Gavin Van Vlack, unbelievable Muay Thai practitioner and just strength and conditioning coach, really just sort of like showed me the way in fitness. He, whenever I would see him talk to a new potential client or someone at the gym, the first question he's asked is, he would say, "What's your goal?" And if they said, "Well, I don't really have any goals," he would kindly say, "I'm not the right coach for you. I'm not the right trainer for you." And I think he taught me this idea that if you don't have a goal in place, or if you don't have something that you're working towards, you're sort of walking around blind, you know? And I think that sort of mentality or that philosophy can be implemented into everything in life. You know, I think for people that are performing at a high level, I don't think I've met anyone that performs at a high level that doesn't have a goal or a number of goals or sort of peaks that they're climbing towards. And, you know, I think that's something that's really important to think about when people are trying to succeed in anything. And it could be family, it could be relationships, it could be fitness, it could be nutrition, it could be business. You know, I'm so grateful that you took the time to hang with me today. You are such an inspiration. You're like never not smiling, and you've inspired so many people, men and women. You know, I'm dying to have a plank off with you again, and we're gonna have to do it on Instagram Live because I'm gonna fucking win. And I know you probably won't.
I don't know if you've seen.
Well, tell me about PowerAbs real quick. I want to hear about that.
PowerAbs is a abs program that I came up with a little over a year ago, last January, and the idea came about because everyone has always commented on my abs and the many, many years of gymnastics. Obviously, I have super strong abs.
You have insane abs.
Thank you.
I mean, I just got to say, I'm just throwing your abs are ridiculous. I mean, I've got some fairly decent abs, but your abs are.
Come on. And a lot of people like reached out and they're like, how can I get abs like you? I work with 2 other business people. And the lady, she was like, we need to come up with an abs program. Like, this is ridiculous that we don't have one yet. And I was like, that's a phenomenal idea. Yes, please. And like with this, I remember exactly where I was sitting at the time. And the guy was like, okay, we have an idea. Let us know what you think. And then he said the abs program. I was like, yes, like I've been waiting for this. So it's been super successful, especially, you know, with Corona going on. A lot of people are like, oh, we've like been able to do your program. It's 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week. All you need is a floor. And I've gotten a lot of before and after pictures, and it's just really cool to see just the performance for people as well, like saying that they have stronger cores, and some people have had back pain and they no longer have back pain. Or I had a lady just message me the other day, like saying it's the first time she's ever felt comfortable wearing a bikini to the beach. And I was like, yes. And so like,
killed it.
Yeah. So like thousands of people are doing it, and it's all around the world too, which I think is what makes it the coolest. Cause there's people like in Australia and in Europe, that are doing it. And so it's not like it's just limited to the US. And I've been doing live workouts with people on Facebook every Thursday and Sunday, which is just really cool for me too. And I mean, it's a little extra motivation, helping to motivate and inspire other people in a different way. When you eat, sleep, breathe it, you got to have it easy access, you know, like midnight bike intervals, something. No, but luckily, like I'm really close with my coach too. So he's, you know, been super supportive and programmed everything that I need. And they announced, some people thought the CrossFit Games were going to be off for a little while. But they announced that the CrossFit Games are still going to happen. They've reduced it to 30 girls and 30 guys out in California at the ranch, which is actually where CrossFit started. So it's going to be those athletes along with judges and media people, no spectators or anything this year, which is going to be really strange, but I'm just thankful that they still have it.
When is it?
The end of July, beginning of August. And I mean, it was supposed to be like the 27th to the 1st or something. I can't remember exact dates, but they applied for the permit, which is now just Friday through Sunday. Usually it's Wednesday through Sunday, but it looks like they cut it down. Though the first 2 days we might go off-site, so it might be like an ocean swim or some sort of crazy bike thing or something that's just not on the ranch. But
where can people get PowerAbs?
Either if they follow me on Instagram, if it's Carrie Pearce CrossFit, the link is in my bio. If they just want to like type it out, it's Pearce, Pearce, pointers, pointers.com/PowerAbs, or they can go to my website, which is just carriepearce.com, and I have PowerAbs, Summer PowerAbs, Extreme PowerAbs, Partner PowerAbs. It's like a big PowerAbs family, so they can look at all of them and see the different options and check them out and figure out which one is for them. Or I mean, I've had people do all 3 programs or a mix of a couple of them.
If you can leave us with one thing It was so wonderful talking to you. If you could leave us with one thing to sort of just take in our back pockets, to put a smile on our face in times of trying, specifically like where we are right now, what would that one thing be?
There's a few things that I live by. One of them is just, continuing to be positive all the time, and just whenever something comes your way, there's two ways you can look at it, and you can either make it negative or make it positive. I always choose just to make it positive. We have one life, and you might as well live your best life. Just make sure that you actually enjoy things that you are doing. As I said before, right out of college, I was going to become a PA, and I realized that wasn't for me, and that wasn't going to make me happy. You have two choices. Like, I could go to PA school and end up making a lot of money and go to this route that, go to my job and do what I have to do, or I could venture into fitness, something that I knew that I actually wanted to do and that would truly make me happy. And it was, the less popular option because it might not have been the way that people say success is. But I knew that's what I wanted to do. Make sure whatever choices you're making, make sure it's for yourself and not for other people, because at the end of the day, it's your life. It's so short, and I don't know, I want to make sure that I live it to the fullest and make sure I'm just doing things that I want to do and not what other people or society is telling me I should do. And I think that's why I've been so successful and just really enjoy what I do.
Are you born or made? This is the question I ask every guest.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal question. And I actually thought about it. I've been thinking about it, and I do believe I'm born. Obviously, there's things that switched that kind of fired me through my years. But even at a young age, I was always a hard worker. And I think there's certain things, like I said, that I've come about, like my father and my coach telling me that that I wasn't the most talented, but I worked the hardest. And I think just from that, they said I worked the hardest. And that's just something I don't know any other way. I don't know how to relax. I always work, and it's just something that's ingrained in me, and it's the way that I've been for many, many years, and I think that's part of the reason I'm so successful. I want to say that I'm made, and I want to say I did this myself, but I know that I don't know any other way than hard work and perseverance and just continuing to push. So I think I was born this way, and I do have to thank my parents for some of it.
You are incredible. I wish you so much luck at the games this year. I am going to be rooting for you. I'm going to be your biggest fucking fan. I'm just going to be out there screaming your name throughout the whole games. And anybody listening, you should definitely be doing the same, because I got to be honest, Carrie is probably the kindest person, the most unbelievable athlete you'll ever meet, and truly deserves this win. And I know you're going to do it. And that, when I asked you if you were going to win the CrossFit Games, you didn't even blink an eye. You just said yes, and I have a feeling this is your year.
Thank you so much.
So go out there. You are such a star and such a beam of light, and I don't know what else to say besides from keep doing what you're doing and inspiring us all. And thank you so much. And stay safe. And I know you're going to stay positive. And until that day where I beat you in the plank off.
This guy has jokes. Okay.
I can't wait to put this out there, because everybody's going to enjoy this one.
Of course. And thank you so much. It was a pleasure being on your show. You're an inspiration as well. So I can't thank you enough.
Thanks, Carrie.